Okay, gang, so here we go. I'm going to talk to you about metals very quickly. There are three main families of metals. There are ferrous, non-ferrous, and alloys. Ferrous, if you take the letters Fe from the periodic table, that stands for iron. So if a metal is described as being ferrous, it means that it contains iron, and that changes its properties. So let's get straight into it. Cast iron is really, really strong. It's actually pretty much composed of pure iron with a tiny bit of carbon, like 3.5% of it is carbon. It's got a very, very hard surface, but it can be quite brittle. However, it's crazy strong and it's actually quite cheap. So it's really good for things like manhole covers, where you might have like a lorry driving over the top of it and it's strong enough to withstand the weight of the lorry. It is crazy heavy though because it's really dense. The next one is mild steel. Sometimes it's called low carbon steel. This is iron and carbon. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, the carbon content is actually fairly makes it fairly hard, but it does rust quite badly. It's pretty tough. It's quite malleable, which means it can be formed quite easily. So it's good for things like car body panels. There, yeah, and even things like structural members for buildings, things they'd call RSJs or girders or something like that, are it's quite good for that as well. Then the last one is high carbon steel. High carbon steel is really, 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 really hard. That's why it's sometimes called tool steel or high speed steel, is it has a slightly higher carbon content. So it's really hard, but it's also quite brittle as well. So it's great for things like drill bits because it it takes a lot of work for it to go blunt. And things like saw blades are high carbon steel, even things like screwdrivers and chisels and anything that requires a blade to stay sharp. High carbon steel is a good choice for that. Um, Moving on, aluminium. So aluminium is a non-ferrous metal, and it's actually the most prevalent metal ore in the Earth's crust. Yeah, and so typical application of aluminium is, actually the reason for it is because it's very lightweight. It's actually very soft and it's very ductile and malleable, so it's very easy to form and shape. It's also an excellent conductor of heat and electricity, and it's very corrosion resistant. Aluminium only tarnishes; it doesn't actually rust, or none of the non-ferrous metals rust. So this is used for either like high-end car bodies, so cars that are trying to be a bit lighter, and it's also used for aircraft bodies. But it's never really used in its raw state. It's usually alloyed with something else to make it stronger because it's too soft. Copper is another non-ferrous metal. So copper is it's another pure metal. It is very ductile and it's very, very malleable. So it's pretty soft. You can bend it easily, and it's great at being drawn out into pipes and wires. It's a really good conductor of heat and electricity as well, actually. So yeah, so it's often used for plumbing. So this is water plumbing, but you also get gas plumbing, gas pipes put in with copper as well. And electrical wiring and things, and even sometimes really high-end cooking pots are made from copper sometimes. So yeah, then the last one is zinc. Now zinc is never really used by itself because it's not very suitable for using. It's actually quite weak in its pure state. So it's much better to be used as a coating on a metal. So in this instance, you can have a pretty cheap base metal like mild steel, but then you can coat it in zinc, and then that will stop it from rusting. So yeah, it's easy to work with. You can literally melt it down in a bath, and you can just dip these things into it, and then it'll come out and it's coated. It's coated in zinc. That's actually a process called galvanizing. Yeah, so it's a very, very good metal for coating things with. All right, let's go on to alloys. Probably one of the best known alloys is actually brass. Brass is lovely because it polishes up to a beautiful finish, and it's very what we call aesthetic, and also it casts very, very well as well. This is an alloy of copper and zinc, so it's 65% copper and 35% zinc. So you can actually see that the zinc dilutes the red color of the copper to make it yellow. It's actually harder than copper. There's the zinc that adds that strength to it. It's very good it's very non-corrosive, so it's great for water applications like taps and things. Again, it's a really good conductor of heat and electricity, and it casts really well. Like when it's melted down and poured into a mold, it casts beautifully, and that's why it's so good for using things like taps and stuff. Stainless steel is another one. So stainless steel is an alloy of it's basically steel, so it could even be mild steel or something. So iron and carbon, but then they add in some chromium and some nickel into it, and that really makes stainless steel like super strong. It's very, very hard and tough, and it has an amazing resistance to corrosion. So considering it's a ferrous alloy, it doesn't rust at all, and that's why it's called stainless steel. This is excellent for using on things like cutlery. Um, Kitchen knives, like chef's knives, are great because they stay so hard. Even Tesla are using stainless steel for the Cybertruck, which is crazy. And they're doing that because stainless steel is just so strong and durable, and it doesn't need painting because it's just like the coat, the surface of it is so durable and it doesn't oxidize or anything. Then the last one is Duralumin. So Duralumin is an interesting one. It's actually an alloy of mainly aluminium and a little bit of copper, magnesium, and manganese. And so what this is, it's basically an aluminium alloy that's a lot stronger than just pure aluminium. So it's still malleable, so it's great for using on aircrafts, but it's much stronger and much stiffer. And it's still very lightweight, so it's great for use on like aircraft bodies and things like that. So yeah, right. That is everything you need to know for metal.